We're learning the fourth Siche of Parshas Korach in Chelek Yud Ches on page 212. This shir is being learned Lili Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. The Shaykh is to the mitzvah from Shmiras Mikdash durch the Kohanim and Leviim. In connection with the mitzvah of guarding the Beis HaMikdash, which was done through the Kohanim and the Leviim, oi welchem is nitztave geworden in unser Parsha, regarding which the command, the mitzvah comes in this week's Parsha. Zog the Mishnah non of Masechta Midas. So the Mishnah says in the beginning of Masechta Midas as follows: B'shloisha mekaymes, there are three places hakayinim sheimrim bebeis hamikdash cholo. Three places that the Kohanim have to guard the Beis HaMikdash. V'aleviim be'esrim ve'echad makom cholo. And the Leviim stood guard at the Beis HaMikdash on 21 locations. Chamisha, 5 of those places was al chamisha shari azara, the 5 entrances to the azara of the Beis HaMikdash. So this is the first Mishnah of Masechta Midas. So here it clearly says that there were 5 sha'arim, 5 entrances to the azara. In a spätere Mishnah, in a later Mishnah, it says Shiva sha'arim hayu b'azara cholo, that there were 7 entrances into the azara. And the Mishnah there says what those 7 entrances are. As is an given, nit chamisha nor shiva sha'arim, not 5 but 7 entrances. So this is an obvious contradiction of these two Mishnayos here. Of the Kashya and for the Gemara. So regarding this question, the Gemara gives two answers. Amar Abaye. So the first answer is Abaye says, Trei minayu fundi shiva sha'arim. 2 of these 7 entrances lo tzrich yishima, did not require to be guarded. On the far sagt the Tana as the Shmira is not al chamisha shari azara. So therefore the Tana in the beginning of the Masechta says that there were only guards on 5 of the entrances. So yes, there are 7. They both Mishnayos are the same opinion, and there are 7 entrances. But the first Mishnah is saying from those 7, only 5 had to be guarded. Rava Amar, however, Rava says Tanoi. These two Mishnayos argue they're different Tanoim here. There's one Tana that says that there were 7 entrances and all 7 have to be guarded. And another Tana says that there were 5 entrances and only 5 of them that there are have to be guarded. So this is the Gemara, a machlokes of Abaye and Rava, how to understand the contradiction of these two Mishnayos. The Rambam in Yad HaChazokeh, so the Rambam in the Yad HaChazokeh bringt up from beide Mishnahs. So he quotes from both Mishnayos and he says as follows: V'shiva Aleph. So number 1, the Rambam clearly says V'shiva she'arim hayula, that the Beis HaMikdash had 7 entrances, like it says in the second Mishnah. And then Beis, the second point the Rambam says V'heichan hayu al Leviim shaimrim, where did the Leviim stand guard? Va'al chamisha shari azara, on 5 of those 7 entrances. When it's gleich meisiv den tam, and then the Rambam actually gives a reason for was the shmira is not of chamisha fundi shiva sharim. Why did they only have to stand guard on 5 of the 7 entrances? Shaharei hakayanim shaimrim al shara maikid val shara nitzitz. 2 of those entrances, one was Beis HaMaikid and one was Beis HaNitzotz. So by the entrance of the Maikid and the Nitzotz, the Kohanim would be doing shmira there. So because the Kohanim already did shmira there, so the Leviim did not have to do shmira there as well. That's the Rambam. So now what do we understand from this? According to the Rambam, who of the answers is he accepting? Abaye's answer or Rava's answer? Das heißt, so what we see over here is the Rambam lernt wie der Teretz von Abaye. The Rambam is accepting Abaye's answer, as es ist nicht da kein Plukte zwischen die 2 Mishnahs. That there's no contradiction between the 2 Mishnayos. The first Mishnah is telling you the number of the entrances that the Leviim had to stand guard. And the second Mishnah is telling you the number of the entrances that there are, and that there are 7 entrances. So there's no contradiction between the 2 Mishnayos, like Abaye said. It's Tamua. So now this is very difficult to understand. For was paskin the Rambam via Abaye? Why does the Rambam here paskin like Abaye's answer? This is the chaklal as Abaye v'Rove halacha karove. The rule always is that whenever there's an argument between Abaye and Rava in the entire Shas, we always paskin like Rava. Besides a few exceptions, Yal Kagam, there's exceptions to it, but otherwise the halacha is always like Rava. So why here does the Rambam paskin like Abaye's pshat? In Pirish HaMishnayos, if you take a look in the Rambam's Pirish that he wrote on the Mishnayos regarding these Mishnayos here in Midas, Zok the Rambam So there the Rambam also says something addressing the contradiction of the two Mishnayos, as das was steht in the Mishnah. So when it says in the Mishnah, Chamisha Shari Azara, that there are 5 places that they had to guard, and the 5 entrances to the Azara, is this Ladas Tanakama. So that's only the opinion of this Tana of this Mishnah, the Fishel Yeshmanat Tanoim, because there's another opinion amongst the Tanoim, Misha Amar Chamisha Sharim Haya La Azara. Sorry, again, let me read this again. So this is the opinion of the Tanakama, and what is the Tanakama's opinion? L'fisha Yeshmanat Tanoim Sha'amar, one of the Tanoim, which is this Tanakama that says Chamisha Sha'arim Haya La Azara, that there are 5 entrances to the Azara, V'hu Amedaber Kan. And this is the Tanakama that's speaking over here, and he's saying that there are 5 entrances. V'yeshmem Sha'amar, but then there's another opinion that says that Zion, that there are 5 entrances. And if so, you would have to guard by all 7 entrances. And Vihi Das Rabim. That's the next Mishnah later in the Masechta. Mishnah Daled, actually it's in the same Perek in the Mishnah Daled. And Vihi Das Rabim. And that's the majority opinion that argues with the Mishnah in the beginning of the Masechta. So in the beginning of here, of the Pirush HaMishnayos, it seems like the Rambam is quoting what the Rabbi said, that these two Mishnayos argue with one another. Then the Rambam continues and says, according to the majority opinion of the Chachamim, the guards, the Levim, would only stand guard only on 5 out of the 7 entrances. So now, here it seems like he's quoting Abaye's answer, that even the Mishnah that says that there were 7 entrances, but he would agree that they only stood guard on 5 of them. So isn't it move on? So the question here on what it says in this Pirush HaMishnayos is obvious. The Rambam hyped on Zofenfer in this Tira. He begins answering the contradiction of the two Mishnayos from the Spätige Mishnah Shivasharim Hoye Bazara, from what it says in the later Mishnah that there were 7 entrances, mit dem Teretz von Rava, with the Teretz of Rava, as this is a plukte von Tanoi, that it's an argument between the first and the later Mishnah. Und the Tana von der Mishnah halt as Chamisha Avo, and that the Tana of the first Mishnah here holds that there were 5 entrances, that is. And the later Tana holds that there were, and that's the majority opinion that says that there were 7. On his Messiah, but then the Rambam later concludes in his words, Kishittas Abaye, like Abaye explains, as oich lit Tana, as Shiv Sharim Hoye Bazara, that even according to the later Mishnah that says that there was 7 entrances into the Azara, is the Shmira B'leis Geven of Chamisha Sharim and Ashiva. But the Shmira was actually only on 5 from those 7, which fits with what it says in the beginning of the Perek, with the first Tana, that there were 5, only 5 places where the Kohanim, or the Leviim, that is, guarded the Beis HaMikdash. So then there's no contradiction b'chlal. It's not 2 different Tanoim. So why is the Rambam begin saying that it's 2 different opinions? So now, Muzman Zagan as the Rambam led it. If so, we must say what we see over here is that the Rambam has a different understanding of what Rabbi was saying when he said that there's a machlekes between the first Mishnah and the later Mishnah regarding this. How did we understand until now? The argument between the two Mishnayos are as follows. That in the first Mishnah he holds that there's 5 entrances and only 5 places to guard. The Tana in the later Mishnah holds there are 7 entrances and there are 7 places to guard, and all 7 have to be guarded. In other words, they're really arguing about two different details. They're arguing about the number of entrances that there are, and they're also arguing about the number of places that has to be guarded. But now, according to the Rambam, we have to say that, yes, true, Rav is coming to say that there is an argument here, but they're not arguing about both points. Even when Rav comes and says that there's a machlokes between these two Mishnayos, is the plukte blois in mispar sharim. The argument is only regarding the number of entrances that there are. But they're not arguing regarding the places that have to be guarded. That everybody agrees that only 5 of them has to be guarded. The Tana von Eshte Mishnah halt, the Tana of the first Mishnah's opinion is, as the Zene Geven nor Chamisha Sha'arim, there were only 5 entrances. Ubemele is the Shmira Geven al Chamisha Shari Azara. So then obviously if there's only 5 entrances for the Azara, so there's only 5 places to guard. On the Tana von the Zweite Mishnah halt, wie sagt beferish, and then the Tana in the second Mishnah holds, as he clearly says, as Shiv Sha'arim Oye Bazara, there were 7 entrances. At his Abba Maide, however, he only argues regarding the number of the entrances. But he would agree, as the Shmira is given, not of Chamisha Sharim, that the actual guarding was only on 5 of those 7 entrances. There's 2 of them, even he agrees that 2 of them did not require to be guarded. So that's Rava. So there's an argument only regarding the number of the entrances, but everybody agrees that only 5 were actually guarded. Un Abaya halt. However, Abaya's opinion is, as it says in the talk, that there's no argument here at all. On Allah halten, everybody agrees, as Shiv Sharim Hoya Ba'azara, that there were 7 entrances into the Azara. Even the Tana in the first Mishnah that says it's only 5, he didn't mean that there were only 5 entrances. He's just saying, and he and the second Tana, everybody agrees that there were 7 entrances, and that 2 of them do not have to be guarded. That's what we see here from the Pirush HaMishnayos, the way that Rambam understood what Rava was saying. There's only argument about the number of the entrances. But everybody agrees that only 5 of those entrances were guarded. So with this is answered, Favos the Rambam Paskins, how the Rambam Paskins in Yad HaChazakeh, as the Shmir is given of Chamisha Sharia Azara, that they guarded only 5 of the entrances. Shaharei HaKayanim Shoimrim V'chulu, and he gives the reason that the Kayanim are the ones that guarded the other 2. Viditeretz von Abaya, and seemingly the Rambam is answering like the answer of Abaya. Weil, but now according to what we see here, this is even according to Rava. Because even according to Rava, even Rava will agree that the Tana that says that there were 7 entrances into the Azara agrees that out of those 7, only 5 of them were guarded. On the Rambam paskint vider Tana. So the Rambam is paskening like this opinion of Mishnah Dalet, the second Mishnah over here, that says that there were 7 entrances. Nid with the Tana vasal chamisha have, not like the Tana that says that there were only 5 entrances. Well, das is das Rabbi, because the Rambam is paskening, as the Rambam himself says in Pirush HaMishnayos, that there's an argument between the 2 Mishnayos how many entrances there were, and the Tana of the second Mishnah that says that there were 7 entrances. It's the majority opinion. V'yarzak in Pirush HaMishnayos kanal. So he's paskening like that opinion, that there were 7 entrances, and out of those 7, only 5 were guarded, because the other 2, the Kayanim already guarded. So therefore what the Rambam says does go according to Rava's opinion, and according to the second Mishnah, which is the majority opinion. So it all fits. However, their beard is l'chayre tamua. This explanation of the Rambam and Rava's opinion is very difficult to understand. Why? If, according to Rava, there really is no contradiction between these 2 Mishnayos here. Aleph. On one hand, you can say that there were 7 entrances. On base von deswegen, but at the same time is the Shmire nor al Chamisha Sharia Azara. There's no contradiction to say that even the one that says that there were 7 entrances, but only 5 of them were guarded. If so, was is the Hechrech von Rava zu sagen, Tanoihi ulafushim achleikes. So why is Rava coming and saying that there's an argument here between these 2 Mishnayos, and he's adding an argument when it's not necessary? As the Erste Mishnah, Chamisha Sharia Azara, then Rava comes and says that the first Mishnah that says that there were 5 places that the Levium had to guard, can it always come and the Tana from the Zweite Mishnah will not fit with what the Tana says in the next Mishnah, that there were 7 entrances. Via Abayah, like Abayah says, that there's no contradiction at all. Nor mus halten as Chamisha Hava. And he has to hold that there were only 5 entrances. Why can't we say, like Abayah simply said, that the Tana in the first Mishnah agrees there were 7 entrances? He's not talking about the number of the entrances at all. He's just talking about the places where the mitzvah of guarding the Beis HaMikdash is. So what forced Rava to say that there's any argument between these 2 Mishnayos? If we're going to say, like we thought in the beginning, that there's actually a machlokes between the first and the next Mishnah, whether they guarded in 5 places or they guarded in 7 places. So there's a machlokes about the mitzvah of Shmira here. But now that we're saying that according to the Rambam, the Rava also agrees that there's no argument about how many of the places has to be guarded. The Tanoim of both Mishnayos hold that only 5 of the places has to be guarded. And Elamai, Rava comes and says they're only arguing about how many entrances there are. Why should we say that they're arguing about how many entrances there are? Why can't we simply say that the first Mishnah is speaking about the mitzvah of Shmira and is telling you that the mitzvah of Shmira is on 5 places, and the next Mishnah does not disagree with that. He also says that the Shmira was only on 5 places. He's just telling you that the number of actual entrances is 7. So what was forcing Rava to say that there's any argument here at all? The Tmiya Anal is noch mehr Beilet and Pirush HaMishnayos. This question here is something that's more emphasized when you read the words of the Rambam in Pirush HaMishnayos, whereas where the Rambam brings both points together. Aleph, first he says, der Tana von der ersten Mishnah halt, chamisha sharim hoya la'azare ketiritz rave. The Tana of the first Mishnah says that there were five. There were five entrances to the Azara, which is Rava's answer. And Beis, oich di chachama v'zogin, shiva sharim hoya ba'azara. And even the chachama that say that there were seven, halten, they agree, shaya mishamer al chamisha sharim min ha-shiva, that the actual Shmira was only on 5 of those 7. So Olachayre, if so, seemingly, Vibalt, as Eichladasa Chachamim Hoya Mishamar al Chamisha Sharim Chulu, Chachamim in the second Mishnah agree that there were only 5 that the mitzvah of Shmira applied to for the Leviim. Favastafman Einlein in the Mishnah al Chamisha Sharia Azara. So then why do we have to say, when the first Mishnah says Chamisha Sharia Azara, Vidervas halt Chamisha Sharim Hoya Lazara? Why do we have to say that he holds like the opinion that there were only 5 entrances? Unit loite chachamim das rabim. Why shouldn't we say that the first Mishnah agrees, like the majority opinion, like the chachamim, v'zagin shahayim mishamer al chamisha sharim cholu, that it's just a shmira. That the first Mishnah is only talking about the shmira. The actual shmira was on 5 of those entrances, but not that there were only 5. There were 7, like the later Mishnah says. But the shmira was only on 5 of those 7. Punkt wie der Rambam allein paskind in Sefer Hayad lernt allein again. Punkt wie der Rambam allein lernt in Sefer Hayad HaChazaka. As the Rambam himself says in Yad HaChazaka that these two things are not a contradiction at all. There were 7 entrances, but there was only 5 of them that were guarded because the other 2 were guarded by the Kayanim. So something over here is missing in understanding how the Rambam understood Rava's opinion that there has to be a machlokes between these two Mishnayos. That we das verstehen, v'hagdem akushi in Lashon Mishnah Shiva she'arim hayu ba'azara chulu. So this will be understood by first answering the following question regarding Mishnah. This is Mishnah Dalet, which gives you the number of entrances that there were into the Azara, and it says the number 7. And the Mishnah goes on to say what those 7 were. The Mishnah rechentais alle shiva sharim. The Mishnah goes on to enumerate what those 7 entrances were. Shara delek v'chulu, and all the 7 entrances. Tzilibas is the Tana Magdim, Shiva Sha'arim Chulu. So then why does the Tana have to give a number? Shiva Sha'arim, that there was 7. Ubalashon Ashas, this is a question that the Gemara many times asks, Minyan Alamali. Why does it have to give me a number? If you'll read and you'll see what they are and you'll count them, you'll see yourself that it's 7. It's not necessary for the Tana to give me this number. This question you could really actually ask also regarding the first Mishnah of Masechta Midas, where it says Chamisha al Chamisha Sharia Azara. Why does it say Chamisha Sharia Azara and so on? And all the other numbers that it says over there in the beginning of the Masechta, and Order 26, the Rebbe addresses that. Is the beer in them? So the answer here, why it says a number is as follows. Dasas migefinen kamedeis benigeya the mispara sha'arim in the Azara. Seemingly, we find a few different opinions regarding the number of entrances that there are into the Azara de Beis HaMikdash. As we had until here, Hey, Zayin. There's a discussion whether there's 5 entrances or 7, but there's actually another 2 opinions. Ches, another entrance, there's 8 entrances, or Yud Gimel, 13 entrances into the Azara. So what does this mean? How could there be an argument how many entrances there were? Is this nit kein plukte in Metzias? It's not an argument about the fact of the entrances to the Azara. Viful sha'arim as an adart given, how many entrances there were. But says doch haklal, there's a rule, says nechayach aplukte in Metzias. It's not possible to say that Tanoim are arguing about a fact. It's a matter of fact. How were the walls of the Azara built and where were the entrances? Nor, rather, what are these different numbers of entrances? Lukula almas and adart given yud gimel sha'arim. In actuality, everybody agrees that there were 13 entrances. We had abgebracht in Mishnah. And this is quoted later in the Mishnah, also in Masechta Midas, that there were 13 different entrances. Und die Machleikis besteht in them, so rather, the different numbers of entrances, and there's an argument about this, what are they really arguing about? Wie viel von die Yud Gimel Sha'arim, how many of those 13 entrances haben adin shar? Which one of them qualify to have the halacha of an entrance regarding certain halachas, that it actually has the halacha of a proper entrance that's designated for an entrance? Hey, Zayin, Chesa, Yud Gimel. Is it 5, 7, 8, or 13? That's the argument. Physically, was it a place that you were able to enter? Yes, physically there were 13 places you were able to enter. But just because you're able to physically enter through 13 different locations, it doesn't mean that all 13 qualify and rise to the level of pi halacha to be qualified as a proper entrance. So that's the different numbers that are mentioned in the Mishnayos. Und die Nafkemine zwischen die Sha'arim, was haben adin Sha'ar, und die andere Sha'arim, is the actual practical halachic difference between these entrances, if it actually has a halachic status of a entrance, and the other ones that are not halachically an entrance, even though physically they are, is negay. It's a common yanim and halacha. It's relevant in a few different areas in halacha umehem, and from the places that it's relevant are the following. Aleph number 1, benegeya tzashmiras hamikdash, regarding what we're discussing here, the mitzvah to guard the entrances of the Beis Hamikdash. Only those entrances that actually al pi halacha are qualified as an entrance require to be guarded. But any other entrance, even if physically you could enter, but it doesn't have the halachic status of an entrance, does not require any shmira. Beis, and the second nafkamina would be b'negei tzibiyas mikdash, regarding the isser of entering into the Beis Hamikdash in times that you're not allowed, a person that's tamei or so on. If a person comes into the Beis Hamikdash through those entrances that do not qualify to be the normal way to enter, it's not made for this entrance, even if physically there's a certain opening there, you can say, as this is nit derech bia, it's not considered to be the normal, customary way to enter. One of the conditions to qualify this entrance, that it should be forbidden to enter when you're tamei, is it has to be derech bia. You're entering in the ordinary fashion. So if a person enters through those entrances that are designated for this, and therefore it has the halachic status of a place to enter, so then you're not allowed to enter through there. But if you're entering through another way which is not derech bia, it's not a place that's ordinarily used for this, so then the issa doesn't apply in the same way. The third nafkimina would be gimel b'nigayat mezuzah, regarding the halacha of placing a mezuzah on these entrances. So now the Rebbe clarifies, really none of the entrances of the Beis Hamikdash require a mezuzah. But now, lulei dem limud, if not for this, that there is a pasuk that teaches us that ma bayishu hu chayil, that when the Torah says you have to place a mezuzah, beisecha, mezuzah is beisecha, that just like your house is mundane or your own home, af kol shu chayil, so too the mitzvah of mezuzah is only in a place that's chayil, that's not holy. Yatzu eila shein kodesh, so therefore this excludes the entrances to the Beis Hamikdash which are holy, and therefore there's no mitzvah of mezuzah here. So if you would not have this limud, and there would be a mitzvah of mezuzah, vod gewende din, so then you would have the following distinction. As dafke di sha'arim v'shaben adin shar, only those entrances that qualify as an ordinary place to enter, and therefore they have the halacha of an entrance, they are obligated in the mitzvah of mezuzah. Even on not only of entrance of a home, but also any other kind of entrance of gates or of walls, it would also be qualified as an entrance. So that would be another nafkemina, but this last nafkemina is obviously not b'payil, because b'payil there's no mitzvah of mezuzah b'chlal b'nigeya to the entrance to the Beis Hamikdash. In Order 24, the Rebbe points out that the reason why this nafkemina is being brought here is because in that time period, the Rebbe was speaking very strongly about mivtza mezuzah, so therefore the Rebbe wants to speak about a subject of mezuzah as it relates to this. On the far, so now to answer our question, so why does the Tan of the Mishnah give the number of 7 entrances? Is the Mishnah makdim shiva sha'arim hayu ba'azareh? He says that there were 7 entrances into the Azareh, because he wants to establish as nar di zibin sha'arim, it's only these 7, uniti andere. In other words, really, there are more. You'll count what it says in this Mishnah, and you'll count later, you'll come to the conclusion that there are more. But he's coming to tell you that only these 7 out of the others have the Gedavid in Shar. They rise to the level and they qualify as being a Shar, not only physically that you're able to enter, but al pi halacha, they are considered to be an entrance. That's what the Tana is coming to emphasize. We could add another point to this here, why it says the number 7. Al derech v'chazal zagan from pasuk sheishari miklat tiyana, similar to what Chazal teach us regarding the pasuk when it speaks about the are miklat, a person that killed somebody b'sheigig, and he has to go to ir miklat. So the pasuk uses the term sheish. 6 are miklat there are. So Chazal tell us achiyu sheshton kolta is ka'achas, that these 6 cities that absorbed this person, that killed B'Shaygig, only when all 6 are designated at once, then they have the power to absorb this person. You can't have one without the other. So similar we could say over here regarding these 7 entrances. By adding this number, that there was 7 entrances into Azara, is the Mishnah Merames, the Mishnah is hinting, as Yala Sharems and an Ein Metzias, that all these entrances are like one thing. They all are entrances from different physical locations, but it's just really one point. Entrances into the Azara. And if is nita, they're full of mispah from Zibn Sharim, and if you don't have all 7 entrances, is of Zaynitchal, then din from Shara Azara. So then, on none of them could the halachic status of an entrance into the Azara take effect. The tzarich shmirah v'cholu, which would mean that you would require to have the shmirah. The status of the entrance of the Azara is only complete when you have all 7 together. Then the entrances are complete, and then they have the halach of an entrance into the Azara, and then you need the shmirah. But one without the other is not yet a complete entrance, and therefore does not yet require the shmirah. So now Val Pizeh. So based on this premise that when we're speaking here about the numbers of the entrances, so in actuality there were 13, but only 7 of the 13, this Mishnah here is saying, have the halachic status of an entrance. So when Rabbi here says that there's a machlokes Tanoim, how many entrances there were, whether 5 or 7. So it doesn't mean that there's an argument regarding the fact. How many entrances there actually were. Now the plukte is, rather the argument is, from those 13 entrances that there were into the Azara, how many have the halachic status of an entrance? Das was the Tana from the erste Mishnah sagt. So when the Tana of the first Mishnah says, as the Shmir is given nor al chamisha sharei Azara, that the Shmir of the Levium was only on 5 of the entrances of the Azara, Hagam az lepoyel zene given yud gimel sharim, even though there were actually 13 entrances, is valishitase, because according to his opinion, haben nar di chamisha sharim gahata din shar, only 5 of these entrances qualified to be considered an entrance. Un chamisha havu, when the Gemara uses the expression that there were only 5, meant sha'arim. It means that there were 5 that qualified to be an entrance al pi halacha, mitadin shar. But it doesn't mean that there were only 5 physically to enter. There were really 13. That's the first Tana. Aber, the Tana from the Zweite Mishnah. But then the Tana of the Mishnah later, vazakt shiva sharim hoye bazara, that there were 7 entrances to the Azara. What is he saying? What is he arguing here? Eralt as shiva from the Yigil Musharim haben adin shar. 7 out of those 13 did qualify to be a proper entrance al pi halacha. So for all 7, there should be an obligation to guard all of them. And this, that even the Tana of this Mishnah agrees that only 5 out of those 7 were actually guarded by the Levium. As the Rabbi pointed out before, you see from the Rambam and Pirush Mishnayos that the argument between the 2 Mishnayos is only regarding the number of the Shiyarim, but not regarding how many of them the Levium had to guard. So he also agrees that only 5 out of these 7 had to be guarded by the Levium. Is Valtrei Minayu Loy Tzrich Yishimu. 2 out of these 7 did not have to be guarded. Was this meant nit as is an nit mechuyev in shmira? It's not because these other 2 entrances are not obligated to be guarded. They are entrances al pi halacha, and therefore they do have to be guarded. Nor the Rambam is mas, but rather as the Rambam himself explains in Yad HaChazakeh, shaharei hakayinim shomerim al shara moiked val shara nitzes, because by those 2 entrances, since the kayinim already did the shmira there, so therefore it's not necessary for the Levium to be there as well. The says, Di tzvei sha'arim zenen shayin shmurim durich di kainim. They were already guarded by the kainim, so it's not necessary for the Levium to guard there as well. So this explains what exactly is the machlokes according to Rabbi between the 2 Mishnayos. Everybody agrees that the number of sha'arim physically, that everybody agrees to. There were 13. The halacha, what shar rises to the status of al pi halacha to qualify as a shar, that's the machlokes, if it's 5 or 7. But even according to the Tana that says that there were 7 that qualified to be a shar, he agrees to the Tana in the beginning of the Masechta that only 5 of them, the Levium, have to do the shmira, because the other 2, Kainim already did shmira there. The mit vert euch musber, This also explains another detail here. A question we could ask on the Lashon of the Rambam when he describes this, that on two of them, the Kainim already did Shmira there, the Lashon the Rambam says in the Yad HaChazakeh, that there's 5 of the entrances that the Leviim would have to do the Shmira, but not on the other 2, that there are really 7. So on another 2 they don't have to. The Rambam uses the expression that where did the Kainim do their Shmira? Outside, by the entrance, on the Shara of the Maikid and the Shara of the Nitzitz. So the question is, the Shmira from the Kainim is doch nit gewem beim Shara Maikid and Shara Nitzitz. The Shmira, the way the Kainim did their Shmira wasn't outside at the entrance, nor bebeisa Nitzitz or bebeisa Maikid. Their entrance was, their Shmira that is, was on the inside, in the house of this Nitzutz and the house of the Maikid, inside, not on the outside. Wir steht in Mishnah, and that's actually the expression that the Mishnah says. That it was bebeisa Maikid and bebeisa Nitzutz. Those were the places where from the 3 places that the Kainim did their Shmira. Und der Rambam allein bringt es mit etliche Halachas frie. The Rambam himself quoted before, when he quoted the Lashon of the Mishnah regarding the places that the Kainim do the Shmira, their Shmira is bebeisa Nitzutz, inside. Hein was is der Rambam Mishana und schreibt, so why here does the Rambam change the language of the Mishnah? And here he says that the Kainim did their Shmira al Shara Maikid val Shara Nitzitz. That the Kainim Shmira is on the entrance, on the outside, by the Shara of the Maikid and the Shara of the Nitzitz. Fianal is das verstandig, but based on what we're explaining before, this is understood. Damit is the Rambam Madgish. What the Rambam is coming to emphasize is as euch die 2 Sha'arim hab ma din Shar. That the truth is that these 2 entrances really qualify to be an entrance which would require the Leviim to do the Shmira. These 2 entrances are mechuyev in Shmira just like the other entrances into the Azara. Right? So in other words, you may think that these 2 entrances do not qualify as entrances. So maybe the Kainim did Shmira there, the Beis HaNitzitz and the Beis HaMaikid. There was places for the Shmira of the Kainim. But who says it qualifies for places of Shmira for the Leviim, which were supposed to guard the entrances? So maybe the Beis HaNitzitz and Beis HaMaikid do not qualify for the Shmira of the entrances. So therefore the Rambam emphasizes that no, the truth is that even these 2 entrances are also Sha'arim that really do qualify to be entrances. There are Shiva Sha'arim. The Rambam is paskening like the majority opinion that there are 7 out of the 13 that qualify as entrances of Pi Halacha that require Shmira. Und das was die Leviim sind nicht Shemer auf sie. So why did the Leviim not guard these entrances? Is weil durch die Shmira von the Kayanim bebeis HaNitzot bebeis HaMaikid, through this that the Kayanim did their Shmira inside in the Beis HaNitzot and Beis HaMaikid, zenen ze sheim bederach memele sheimrim al Shara Maikid val Shara Nitzot. Their Shmira on the inside is also going to be enough for the entrances on the outside to be considered guarded by their Shmira on the inside. As the Rebbe clarifies here. Das heißt, what this means is as follows. In the Shmira, bebeis HaMaikid or bebeis HaNitzitz, zene faran 2 dinim. When the Kainim came and did their Shmira on the inside in this Beis HaNitzitz and Beis HaMaikid, so there are 2 different dinim of what their Shmira accomplished. Aleph, number 1, the Chiv Shmira mitzad bayis, as evi Beis Avtinis. Was das is shaykh to the Kainim. There were certain batim, these rooms, these chambers in the Beis HaMikdash that the Kainim had to stand guard there, and their Shmira is on the bayis, on the inside. That's one halacha of Shmira that the Kainim were doing, which is their own chiyuv of Shmira in this location. But then there's another din of Shmira that they accomplished as well, mitzad sha'arim. The shi'arim, entrances, required to have guards outside by the entrances. Was is in zeh? That there is over here, that this chamber also served as an entranceway, as a way to go in. Was das is shaykh biket to the Leviim. And that's the din of Shmira that belongs primarily to the Leviim that are supposed to do the Shmira for the entrance. But wie bald das durch the Shmira von the Kainim bebeis HaMaikid bebeis HaNitzos, because the Kainim are guarding this place and doing the Shmira on this chamber, doing their obligation of Shmira in the chamber here, is b'derech memela faran Shmira oichev Shara Maikid v'Shara Nitzos. So automatically this entranceway where you walk through here going into the Azara is also going to be guarded as an entrance as well. Haben die Levim sei schon nicht gedarft hitten. So therefore, the Levim, that is, did not have to separately come and do Shmira in this place, because when the Kohanim did their Shmira here, their Shmira fulfilled both obligations. The Shmira for the place, for the house, which is the Chiv of the Kohanim, and also the Shmira of this location as an entranceway entering into the Azara. So that's why the Rambam emphasizes over here, Shara Moikid and Shara Nitzitz, that the Kohanim's Shmira over here was not just their Shmira on the bias, which the Rambam already mentioned before, but also the Shmira accomplishing the din of Shmira for the Levim, for the Shara Nitzitz and Shara Moikid. Al-Pi, Kolanal, now based on all of this, coming back to the main question that the Rebbe had. How do we understand the opinion of Rava? So Rava says that the argument between the first and the second Mishnah here that discusses the number of the entrances into the Beis HaMikdash or into the Azara, they're only arguing about the number of entrances. So as the Rebbe explained now, they're only arguing regarding the number of entrances that qualify al pi halacha to be an entrance. But they're not arguing about the number of places that actually required Shmira from the Levium. Everybody agrees that only 5 of them required Shmira from the Levium. If so, the Rebbe's question was, why should we at all say that there's any argument between the first and the next Mishnah here? Why shouldn't we say that the first Mishnah that says that there were 5 places that the Levium had to do Shmira is only discussing their mitzvah of Shmira, which is only in 5 places, but he agrees that there are 7 Sha'arim that rise to the level of being Sha'arim al pi halacha. And the next Tana is discussing the number of the Sha'arim. What are the number of the Sha'arim that are Sha'arim al pi halacha? Why should there be any argument here at all? So now, based on everything we're explaining here, Pikol Anal is move on, it's understood, Favas Rava, und der Rambam in Pirish HaMishnayis. So Rava and the Rambam, as he explains Rava in the Pirish HaMishnayis, learns as the Tana from the Erste Mishnah. So why is it that he understands that when the Tana in the first Mishnah says, Vazokt, Chamisha Sharia Azara, that there were 5 places that the Levium had to do the Shmira on 5 entrances to the Azara. Halt nit with the Tana, he disagrees with the Tana that later says, as Shiv Shara Maya Bazara, that there were actually 7 entrances that rise to the level that they require Shmira. Hagam, as Oichleit in Zweiten Tana, even though seemingly there's no reason for an argument here. Even the Tana later agrees, is the Shmira given, not of Chamisha Shara Min HaShiva. The Shmira was only on 5 out of those 7. So maybe he agrees to what the Tana earlier said, that it's 5 places where they did Shmira. So if we look into the Mishnah, in the beginning of the Masechta, we can see what based on what we said before, why we must say there's an argument here. In Anet from the Mishnah, redt der Tana, wegen die alle Mekaymes wie die Kohanim und Levim haben gedarft hitten. In the beginning of the Mishnah starts off speaking about all of the places where the Kohanim and the Levim had to guard the Beis HaMikdash. V'zel l'shayna Mishnah, and this is what the Mishnah says. B'shloishim Mekaymes ha-Kohanim shaymrem beBeis HaMikdash. There are 3 places where the Kohanim do their Shmir in the Beis HaMikdash. Bebeis Avtines, bebeis HaNitzutz, and bebeis HaMoikid. V'ha-Levim chulu, and then the Levim do their Shmira, Chamisha al Chamisha sha'arei Azara. 5 locations on the 5 entrances to the Azara. That's the Lashon of the Mishnah. So looking now at this Lashon of the Mishnah will make it clear why we can't say that this Tana agrees that there are 7 entrances that qualify to be entrances. Al pi halacha. So what this means over here is, der Tana de Mont nor wegen der Shmire durch die Kohanim bebeis HaNitzutz und bebeis HaMoikid. He comes and says that there is the Shmira of the Levium, of the Kohanim, that is the Shmira of the Kohanim in the Beis HaNitzutz and Beis HaMoikid. Und danach, wenn redt wegen der Shmira durch die Levium of the Sha'arim von der Azara, when he comes and speaks about the Shmira of the Levium regarding the entrances into the Azara, sagt al Chamisha Shari Azara, that there are 5 entrances to the Azara. So now let's think about this. If we were to say that really the Tana of this Mishnah holds that there were 7 entrances that qualify, that really require Shmira, und die Shmira is not of hey Sharia Azara, but in actuality the Levium only did the Shmira in 5 out of those 7. Why? Why only in 5 out of those 7 if really all 7 qualify for Shmira? Because 2 of them don't have to be guarded, because the Kohanim already do Shmira on another 2, so therefore the Levium don't have to do them. That ice coming, then it would come out that there's something that's missing here in the Mishnah. As at the month in Ganzen it, the Tana is missing something. It doesn't mention at all afilu beremez, not even a hint wegen dem Chi of Shmire, was is da auf Shara Nitzitz v'Shara Moikid. Why does the Tana not mention regarding this Shmire that has to be done on Shara Nitzitz and Shara Moikid? And the Rebbe is emphasizing Shara Nitzitz and Shara Moikid as opposed to Beisa Nitzitz and Beisa Moikid. There's the Shmira of the Kayanim in the Beisa Nitzitz, Beisa Moikid, on the chamber, inside. That's one Shmira. That's the mitzvah of Shmira of the Kayanim. And the Mishnah mentions that. And then the Mishnah says the 5 places, the 5 entrances that the Levium have to do a Shmira on. But the truth is, all 7 of the entrances have to have a Shmira. The only reason why the other 2 of these entrances, the Levium did not have to do a Shmira is because the Kayanim, by doing a Shmira in the Beis HaNitzitz and the Beis HaMaiked on the inside, that B'derech Mamela serves also as a Shmira on the Sha'arim of the Nitzitz and the Maiked as well. But the Tana is missing this though. Why would the Tana not say this? If he agrees that really all Sha'arim needs this Shmira, and he's talking about the Beis HaNitzitz and Beis HaMaiked. And the Tana only says that the Kayanim does the Shmira on the Beis HaNitzitz and Beis HaMaiked, on the inside. Not at all indicating that there's any Shmira necessary for the Shiarim of the Nitzitz and the Maiked as well. So by the fact that the Tana omits this altogether, that shows you that the Tana of this Mishnah holds that only 5 of these entrances qualify for Shmira. And the 2 shiarim of the nitzitz and the maiked do not qualify for shmira b'chlal, and that's why the Tana of the Mishnah does not hint that they need shmira. V'oid v'gam zeh ikir. And there's another major point over here as well. V'balt meken lernen as Tana dafke koma. Since we could say that when the Tana says what he says, he's saying it precisely what he means. Upirish devarav, and he spells out his words exactly what he means, and he doesn't say anything that's not clear. Zok min doch nit, as this is lav dafke v'sosam v'chula. There's no reason to say that what the Tana says is not necessarily precise, and that he didn't spell out what he really means, and he really agrees to what it says in the later Mishnah, that there's really 7 entrances that qualify for Shmira. If the Tana over here says that there's 5, and those 5 require Shmira by the Levium, so then he means that there's only 5 entrances that qualify halachically for Shmira, and not more. So therefore, it makes sense to say, und the Far learned Rava and das Rambam, and the Rambam that is, and therefore Rava and the Rambam explain, as the Tana halt, as Chamisha Shara Ma'il Azara. There's an argument here, and the first Tana of the Mishnah says that there were only 5 entrances to the Azara that qualify for Shmira. Blois Chamisha Sharim Hab Nadin Shar and Zena Mechuyev in Shmira. Only 5 of them are Mechuyev in the Shmira. On the Riber, and therefore in Sefer Ayad, wo the Rambam sagt the Psak Halacha wie das Rabbi. When it comes to the Rambam, in the Psak Halacha, where the Rambam is passing like the majority opinion, which is the opinion of the second Mishnah, where it says, as She'iv v'Sharim Hayu Law, that really all 7 of these entrances here did qualify for Shmira, and really theoretically the Levium do have to do Shmira on all 7. Is there medayik? So here the Rambam precisely says, as thus was the Shmira is not al Chamisha Shara Azara, that the reason why the Levium actually only did Shmira for 5 of these entrances is while the Shmira from the Kayanim is because on the other 2, the Shmira of the Kayanim that there was is nit nar bebeis HaNitzot, so bebeis HaMaiked. The Shmira of the Kayanim was not only on the inside in the chamber of the Nitzot and the Maiked, vidideya Fun Tanakama, like you see in the Lashon of the Tanakama of the Mishnah. The Tanakama in the beginning of the Masechta, so he says that the Shmira of the Kainim was only bebeis HaNitzotz, bebeis HaMaiked on the inside. And he doesn't at all hint that the Shmira of the Kainim on the inside also serves as a Shmira to exempt the Levium of doing their Shmira on this location as an entrance. So that's a Tanakama. Tanakama says that the Shmira is only bebeis HaNitzotz and bebeis HaMaiked. But the Rambam, however, says that the Shmira of the Kayanim on the inside of this chamber also automatically serves as a Shmira al Shara Maiked val Shara Nitzitz, also in this location as an entranceway, exempting the Levium of doing their Shmira over here. So the difference in these 2 words over here, whether the word is Beis HaNitzotz or Shara Nitzotz, and same thing, Beis HaMaiked and Shara Maiked, is the whole difference that gives us the indication of how many of these entrances qualified for Shmira. The first Tana in the Mishnah that only mentions that the Kainim did the Shmira in Beis HaNitzos and Beis HaMaikid, and then he moves on to speak about the places, the entrances where the Levium have to do Shmira. So I understand that there's only 5 entrances that qualify for Shmira mitzad the Levium, and the other 2 do not qualify as an entrance. The Rambam, when he mentions the other 2, doesn't talk about them as an entrance. He just says Beis HaNitzos, Beis HaMaikid. But in Sefer Hayad, where the Rambam is paskening like the majority opinion of the later Mishnah that says that all 7 qualify for the Shmira of the Levium because of entrances, so here the Rambam says that the Shmira of the Kainim in the Beis HaNitzos and Beis HaMaikid is also a Shmira on these locations as entranceways. There's a second din of Shmira that the Shmira of the Kainim accomplished automatically to be a Shmira to exempt the Levium of their Shmira in these locations.